everyone. Welcome. It's David Ault. I'm so glad that you're joining me here for the gathering. It's 2024, and welcome to a four-part series that I'm going to call Back to Spiritual Basics, but with a twist. Um, Meaning, I want to share with you four fundamental principles of spiritual psychology with regards to God as everything that I learned, that I spent a majority of my life studying and searching and implementing and even teaching. And I add the idea with a twist because I realize that there is no end game with regards to the study of these things. There is no finality or finish line to being teachable and finding that what we once thought or where we once stood in our understanding is actually finite, and that the absorption of something as indefinable as God or consciousness knows no bounds, knows no ends. It's infinite. And so these next four lessons, these next 4 weeks that I will be sharing this with you, has a little bit of the understanding of that beginning material that I explored and where I am now in my life. That's the twist part. So I want to begin today by reading you a favorite poem of mine by the poet David Whyte. This poem is called Sweet Darkness. And if you are maybe not settled right now, you're listening to this and you're doing something else, I want to ask a favor that you stop and take a breath and make an inner commitment, a personal commitment to yourself that you're going to listen, like hyper listen to these words, because mysteriously or beautifully contained within the words of this poem are all the steps of what I will cover over the next 4 weeks in this one little poem. It's just extraordinary. You ready? Sweet Darkness by David Whyte. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark, where night has eyes to recognize its own. There you can be sure you are not beyond love. The dark will be your womb tonight. The night will give you a horizon further than you can see. And you must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds, except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. I'm going to repeat just that last part. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. And so when you hear those words, is too small for you, there's an invitation housed in there, not only for personal reflection and examination, but also just basic physics, that if something's too small, then you have outgrown it. If something is too small, it is requiring a change or an action on your part in order to find an article of clothing or an environment that is now going to meet the need of your expansion. And so in this poem, he's referring to the fact that there are methodologies and doctrines and dogma and cultural belief systems that we outgrow. And so in part 1 of uh, Back to Spiritual Basics with a Twist, I rely upon the old faithful study of what I absorbed myself in, what was my gateway to a freedom, what was actually my gateway to something that I had outgrown. What did I outgrow? I outgrew fundamentalism, or the cultural spiritual acceptance of my youth, of my heritage, which was Christianity meaning fundamentalist Christianity, which upheld a doctrine that said God was separate from me, that God was some mythical being in the sky, that God was a scorecard keeper and tallying whether or not I was doing the right thing based upon rules that were man made. And to outgrow that is a process, because you can look all around the world and you can see that there are many who are still subscribing to that kind of form of spiritual rule. And it's not even Christianity, it's all widespread within other religiosity and other things that teach a separatism between what God is or the ruler is and us as human beings. And so, back to spiritual basics with a twist, we first have to go back to that. We have to look at where we entered into the portal of belief that we entered into and see, even though we may have geographically separated ourselves from that, or even professed to have psychologically or mentally separated ourselves from that, does not mean that the closet is swept clean. There are still fragments, there are still dust mites of that kind of stuff that linger or return or that we default to. And how is that possible? How could I, once I felt like I had outgrown the concept of a punishing God, how could I return to something like that? Well, it isn't as literal as you think. It isn't that I rush to ask forgiveness of a God in the sky. It's that anytime I am in observation and relationship with the outside world, and I deem something as um, outside of my control or unfair, or I get caught in a cycle of uh, revenge or getting even, or all the kind of muddied dynamics that we have in interpersonal relationships as human beings. That's a form of returning to this separatism that has placed God or has placed power outside of me. Because when I am caught in those muddied actions, I am placing power outside of me. So it's simply a mirror. Maybe not so much focused on God, but it's focused on the separatism of being powerless in such moments. So to me, that's kind of an overlay or the same thing. I'm returning back to what I was indoctrinated in. And you and I both get to be a little bit gentle with ourselves, because how can you not sometimes fall back to that? How can you not sometimes find yourself in sort of helpless situations and immediately default to that childlike or childish um, belief system that cried out for something to save them? And so the first part of the basics, the first part of 4 parts of the basics of spirituality with a twist that I want to return you to, is understanding then what God is. So I learned what I learned through this book called The Science of Mind. This is probably my, I don't know, 6th copy of this book over 30 years. Many of my earlier copies, the binding was broken and there's so much writing in it, and somehow they became unusable. But this book was my gateway to the next thing that I had outgrown, the thing that had become too small for me, the people who had become too small for me, the spiritual psychology and understanding of God that had become too small for me. And so the Science of Mind by a man named Ernest Holmes was my gateway, so much so that I took classes, so much so that I ended up going on a track of divinity school and getting my degree and becoming a minister in this particular format. And I still, to this day, hold great respect and homage to that. The twist part is my own personal development, not a fault in the material, but an understanding that my understanding of this is still in process, that I'm still growing, even after decades of not only studying it, but teaching it. So, but isn't that the way it is? Isn't that the beauty of evolution? So I get to acknowledge that. In this book, there are four, I call them preambles. It's even before chapter one begins, preambles, where Ernest Holmes, the author, outlays what it is that we're about to go on an adventure in, sort of saying, "Hey, here's the syllabus for understanding a non-dual approach to the creative power, or what you have understood God to be." And those four preambles, to me, I think are the perfect cornerstone. And in fact, in the movement of Science of Mind as ministers and the spiritual centers around the world, oftentimes January is used as a back to basics timeline or opportunity to go back and to refresh ourselves. So that's kind of what we're doing. The first preamble in this part is called the thing itself. The thing itself is the term that Ernest Holmes uses in order to name God, because you have to understand that the vast majority of the billions of people around the world, when the word God is used, there are varying degrees of understanding. And so what he's saying is that probably the word God to you automatically translates into some type of muddied uh, reality that has a lot of fault to it. And he's saying we got to go back and we have to, even though it sounds cold and sterile, we're going to call God the thing itself. We're going to remove gender. We're going to remove separation. And what we are going to begin to look at is that the thing itself is sort of the backbone or the spine of all creation. It's the life force. Of all the words, of all the terms that exist for God, life force to me is very palatable. It's what Ralph Waldo Emerson was trying to teach us back in the Transcendentalist movement when he said, God is nature and nature is God, everything is God. So all you have to do is look around the world. All you have to do is look at anything that is life expressing and realize that that is an expression or an individualization of God or the thing itself. It didn't just pop up randomly. It came about through a system of thought. And so the thing itself is, life force is. You and I then, as an expression of that life force, activate it. We have to first recognize that it's there. We have to recognize that we have outgrown something, as the poet David Whyte was saying. We have to get kind of fed up. You know, that's what the poem is talking about, is that when you have no vision, when you're not capable of seeing a vision in the world, then the vision is not there according to you, not because it's not really there in capital R reality, but because our ability to see and recognize life force, even in its apparent absence, is missing. And so it becomes up to us to recognize that which is beyond human appearance. It becomes up to us with regularity to recognize life force, to recognize harmony and oneness, even in its apparent absence. It's not up to someone else. It's up to you. It's up to me. If we're going to bring integrity then to this idea that we are spiritual beings, then we must excavate all of the things. We must learn to begin to dissolve or step away from all the things that cloud the fact that you're a spiritual being. We must learn to be aware of all of the things that are muddying our awareness of the fact that we are a part of that life force, that we are a part of the thing itself. And so, without getting too technical or bogged down in words that might just kind of make it more difficult for you to understand, if you are a part of the thing itself, and I am a part of the thing itself, the life force, God, I'm a part of it, not separate from it. I'm a part of it. So is everybody else. So is every other living thing. If that's true, then my experience of the life force of God is dependent upon my recognition, my allowance, my acceptance, my honoring, my devotion to that life force. How does that come to be? Through my life and my choices and my focus. Because there is another word for the thing itself, which is a part of the science of mind teaching, is the word mind, but it's capital M mind, capital M-I-N-D. And Ernest Holmes stresses in this first preamble that there are not two minds, the mind of God and the mind of humankind, but there's only one mind, one subjective, universal mind. And then there is an individual subjective mind. That's the lens by which you perceive the world. That's your use of the life force, is your individual subjective mind. That is the use of the life force of my individual subjective mind. So there are two aspects of the one mind, not two minds. There's not God's mind and your mind. There's my mind, the usage of that mind through me, the individual. And so if my usage of the mind, of the life force, of the thing itself is very limited, then my experience of life is very limited. And that is neither good nor bad, right or wrong. That's just basic self-awareness. So you walk around this thing called a planet, this cosmos, this cosmology that we're all sharing, and you can almost see the people who have an awareness of an expanded life force. Did that just happen? Or did they have to do the work? Did they have to outgrow something through their experience? As the poet David Whyte was referring to, did they have to go into the darkness in order to reconnect to that life force and gain an understanding that, wait a minute, this is too small for me. This career is too small. This culture is too small. This collective is too small. And in so doing, in the outgrowing of that, they had to grow and expand into something else. That's what self-awareness is. And the thing that you're outgrowing is not wrong. It's not bad. My fundamentalist Christianity then is not wrong. So the parts of me, the old part of me that kept wanting to condemn that, is really missing the mark, because that was the portal that created the discontent within me. That was the part of the soil that began to force me to grow and to make a decision. So everybody is in the same sort of cyclical synthesis of growing. But are you allowing yourself to relish being fed up? Because if you're not, If you're just sitting there going, I'm fed up, and then you're pointing at everything and talking about how bad everything is, then you are not outgrowing, you are stagnating. And your use of the life force of the thing itself is so small in comparison to what wants to happen through you. The thing itself is not separate from you. So mind, mind, what are the virtues and the qualities of mind? Omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. It houses all solution. Houses all connection and comfort and understanding, wisdom, compassion, the feeling of absolute love. Have I tapped into the full maximization of that? Of course not. And so I am in the process. And as I'm in the process, where I'm temporarily standing now is where I speak to you from. Where you hear this is where you temporarily stand and receive. You too are temporarily standing somewhere and vocalizing your belief. And then there's some other parties that are receiving what you have to say, but it's not the end game. There's a constant evolution. And so it's a beautiful thing to outgrow. And what I'm starting to see is that there seems to be a celestial speed up to the process of outgrowing. It's like, whoo, hang on. Okay, that works right now, but ooh, here we are now. Ooh, here we are now. And so part 1 is an invitation to you to reflect upon your understanding of the thing itself. Where are you in relationship with that? Where are you? We can't move forward. We can't even really effectively cover any of the how unless we first pause and ask ourselves, what is it that I believe? What am I practicing? I'm so bombarded, I'm so weighted by the noise of the world. Have I forgotten that there is a life force that is undeniable? And so, with that question and with that invitation to you this week to really sit down in your devotional time and to go, what do I believe with regards to the thing itself? I want to read you this poem again. And this time, I'm going to stop a little bit. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. What does that mean? You can only perceive the world from your own inner interior. So if your inner interior is completely weary, all that you will be able to see is weariness. So David Whyte says, when your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. Not because that's the reality of the world, but that's the only reality that you can see in the world. He goes on, when your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you, because it's not the responsibility of the world to find you. It's the responsibility of you to enter into the vastness of the world. But if you have no vision, a visionary is someone who understands that the thing that lights them inside, the gifts, they don't even have to know what the gifts are. They just want to serve, or they just want to be a part of humanity. They want a taste of freedom. And so the visionary understands that they will spend the rest of their lives honoring that, making choices that are in alignment with that, and understanding there's no finish line. So when your vision is gone, no part of the world can find you. Again, that's personal responsibility. Time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own. Time to pause. Time to pause. Time to go into your personal little private closet of devotion and go, wait a minute. Because there, he says, you can be sure you are not beyond love. The dark will be your womb tonight. It's like an intentional rebirth. He says the night will give you a horizon further than you can see. That's a rebirth of clarity, not clarity that's ever been void of you, but clarity that has always been. And you must learn one thing, he says. The world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds. Accept the one to which you belong. Give up all the other opinions. Give up all the other persons, places, and things that you have outgrown. Because sometimes, he says, it takes darkness and the sweet confinement, the silence of your aloneness to learn that anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. So, part 1, where are you in your aliveness? Where are you in your enthusiasm of possibility? And as you sit and contemplate with these things, as I encourage you to go and look up this poem on your own and study it for yourself, as I ask you to contemplate the thing itself, life force, and how you are never separate from that, how there's only one mind. Contained within that one mind is infinite potentiality. You have access to that to the degree that you are able to see a world that has that infinite potentiality. And then lastly, don't make the mistake of labeling what you have done or what you are currently doing as wrong or other people as wrong, because you're only going to drag the process. Because this is not a question of right or wrong. It's about understanding that wherever you are in this moment that you're hearing this is the now, the isness. And the only thing that matters is the now, is the isness. And so the question becomes, what will you do from here? Look into the comments for additional references and material, the poem, and also an invitation for you to consider that if you are getting inspiration from this channel, from these talks, to participate in right livelihood and become a part of an even exchange of energy. I welcome that support. Our system is tax deductible, so you actually create a win-win for yourself. We experience a win by your support, and you also get to claim that in that funny little human thing called taxes. So look for that as well in the comments. And I look forward to part 2 next week. Thanks.